Hi, I'm Joe Walsh, the Development Officer with the LGBTQIA Plus Heritage Project. In this episode of the Queer Heritage podcast, I'm talking with Shane Cassidy, who reminisces about the Carpenters Club, Crow's Nest in the Parliament, and much, much more. Hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, welcome to the Queer Heritage podcast. I'm Joe Walsh, and today I'm chatting with Shane Cassidy. And we have a few guest stars. You may not be able to see them properly just off screen. We have Buddy and Bailey. And we're just going to have a wee chat about gathering oral history and what it was like for you, Shane, back in the day. So if we want to go back, Shane, to when you first came out, if you can remember, what age were you? And if you don't mind telling us sort of what year it was.
It's all very easy. I think anybody's coming out is a memorable moment for them. It'd be hard to forget. I was 28. Um, I was born in Lurgan, County Armagh, and although I had told a couple of friends that I was gay in my 20s, it was only after the end of a relationship I had with my son's mum. Um, Earth and I have been in a relationship for about 5.5 years. Our son was a few months old, and we decided very amicably that it was time. There was no point in staying together just for the child. Um, Ursula had been the first person I had told I was gay, and it was many years later, after we broke up, she told me she was lesbian. So we're or what Maggie Thatcher used to call a pretended family unit. And we weren't pretending at all. And we're still very much a family unit. So it was after living around the corner from them for a couple of years that I told my two male best friends, and both of them rejected me. And it was that cue of like, oh wow, if this is the two people I'm best friends with, and they so casually just dismiss me, then I better go. And I didn't know where to go, but I just thought I better go.
So were you living in Lurgan at this time?
Living in Craigavon at this time, yeah. We had moved to Craigavon just, but in those days it was the easiest place to get a house and or a flat or whatever. And we got a flat and then a house when we were pregnant. So I decided that I needed, and I had no idea. I had no idea. I thought San Francisco, maybe New York was the only places in the world, as far as I was concerned, that had other gay people. Um, I literally had no insight into any community aspects of it. I thought it was very much a place where you could go to have sex. It wasn't even about relationships or about being or about finding a love or a husband. It was literally just finding somewhere to be safe. And my limited knowledge then was, San Francisco or New York, maybe London.
And what
But
year was this?
so my son was born 85, so about 87, 88, 87. And so I luckily enough had a friend who had lived in Belfast. Was not at that stage was living in Craigavon. Actually, they just died last year, and they were a wonderful woman. And she knew sort of the pioneers of the gay gay labor rights organization or something. I can't remember.
Yep.
NIC, the Northern
Gay Rights
Association,
Association,
Nigra, yeah,
Niagara.
was
And
Jeff Dutton and co.
yes, and we only had decriminalisation here in 1981, wasn't really enacted until 82. So you were only 5 years after decriminalisation.
I didn't even know it was illegal. I just knew that it wasn't allowed, that it was frowned on, that it was dangerous. Maybe, you could come into physical, but I didn't know it was illegal. I didn't think in those terms. I was really sheltered and really naive. And I mean, I think a large amount of that was having, with all the best intentions in the world, hid in a heterosexual relationship for 5.5 years. I had learned to walk straight, talk straight, dress straight, and keep the focus off me and stay in a relationship with a woman, and that it was all fear-based, if anybody finds out. So it wasn't about being legal, or it wasn't about love or anything. It was just about finding somewhere to go where there was other people like me. And I didn't think Belfast was an option. But Maureen, who was the woman who had lived in Belfast and knew the likes of Jeff and Sean McGoran and Doug Sobey and people like that, she said, right, you're coming out. I didn't have any choice in it. So she had arranged the dinner for me. She came over and said, Saturday night, we're going to Belfast. You're having dinner with two guys I know, Brian and, can't remember the other guy's name, he came up to me in a minute. Were two guys that she knew, and we were having a dinner in their house. So we went to Brian's house. I think it might have been on the Lisburn Road. And we had really nice food. And I remember even sitting thinking, like two guys in a living room cooking food was just the most normal, ordinary, mundane thing. And I was completely bemused about it. And then we went to the Crow's Nest, which at that stage was not even a gay bar. It was a bar where gay people were allowed to go to and not get hassled, as long as they weren't like hugging and kissing or anything. It was very much you were just very restrained, I felt. But it was still amazing to go to and see, like, it was pretty full, and think, oh my God, there's people here. And then we went to the Carpenter Club, and it was like the Secret Service. It was like it was like everything I had imagined. We went down an alleyway. At this stage, I was fairly drunk, and we went down an alleyway. As far as I remember, there was a door covered with metal, and like this pillbox, opened after you knocked the door, and they looked, and they knew Jeff Dudgeon was with us, and they knew Jeff and Brian and stuff, and then they let us in, and we went upstairs, and there was a pool table. There was a bottle club in those days. You brought your own booze, and we continued to drink, and I could hear the music pumping downstairs, and but I wasn't drunk enough. And I sat upstairs, and I really don't like playing pool. I really was, it was pure fear. I was afraid to go downstairs. I was just afraid. I didn't know what to expect, or what, it wasn't anything I planned even on. I hadn't asked what we were doing. I was just dragged from the dinner to the bar, and from the bar to the club. And then I found myself in this place, and there was like men and women, I presumed were gay and lesbian, and music banging. But eventually I got drunk enough, and I loved to dance, so I went downstairs, and I was like just at the bottom of the stairs, and I looked up, and there was a young guy who I came to. I never knew him personally, but I learned his name was Yarab the Arab, which is very racist these days. And I was told later he was a doctor, and I was told later he died of HIV and AIDS, and but he was short and stocky and hairy, and he had his t-shirt off and was whooping it above his head, and he was standing on some, I don't know what he was standing on, but he was above other people. And I remember honestly just thinking, oh my God, I'm home. I even get emotional when I think about that. I'm home. And I suddenly realized there was dance floor, everybody was having fun, and the music was loud, and it was banging, and it was Belinda Carlisle, Heaven's a Place. Heaven's a Place on Earth.
On Earth, yeah.
And I just thought, Heaven's a Place on Earth, I'm home.
Tune.
Absolute tune, And I remember wading into the dance floor and not knowing what, I just was mesmerized. I just, heaven was a place on earth. And continued to dance, and some of the people, Jeff came down and danced with me, and other people came down, and I just got lost in the night, and I don't remember anything else about that night. I don't remember going home. I don't remember anything. I just remember having some place on the earth. Yarb Yarb. I never learned his right name, God love him. But he just inspired. I just thought, oh my God, he's gorgeous, but he's having the time of his life. So I went and had the time of my life. And I went home to Craigavon, and on that night decided, right, I need to move. I need to get the hell right out of here. And within a few weeks, I went down again and stayed in Jeff's house. I went down 2 or 3 times, and then just, but in the time that, going down for Saturday night, come back and to the real world on Sunday was just not working for me. It just was horrible. I come down from having so much fun. And so literally within weeks I arrived in Belfast. Jeff had a friend called Kathy who had a flat. She was renting on the Lisburn Road and she has spare bedroom. So I moved in there, and honestly, I was, it seems funny now because I've been in Belfast nearly 40 years, but I was afraid to get a bus down the Lisburn Road in case it took me to the wrong part of Belfast. And I wouldn't be able to find my way home. Country boy at heart. And so every time I walked into town, I walked, I wouldn't get a bus. It took me about a year to get a bus. And very quickly moved onto the K scene. Ended up dating Jeff for a while, which was a great experience because I remember sitting in the piano bar I can't remember what that place is called now, just off Botanic. Um, and drinking whiskey and singing tunes to people playing the piano. And just loving city life and loving that I could be with this man. And it was almost like we shared a secret that nobody knew. And yet feeling very much with him, there was a difference. And that was it. That was my baptism into the gay scene. I was very fledgling then. It was very small. And it certainly didn't feel very big city gay life, I suppose. It never felt like it was like when I'm on the scene, I was having an absolute time, and then you come out of it, and that was it. You were back down to earth, go to work, don't mention it, don't tell anybody what you did at the weekend, all of that stuff.
The secret.
Yeah, you still felt like I hadn't really come out.
Yeah.
I was talking to more people, and I was saying, yes, I'm gay, but it felt like, after the weekend was over, back into the closet again. And that didn't last very long. I don't have that personality. And so I ended up wearing, I would get t-shirts with Queer Nation on them or whatever t-shirt I had quite a few of them, and I would wear them downtown. And of course, you would come into conflict. And so I got very confrontational, I was just angry that I think it was like, why don't you just fuck off and leave me alone? Um, and so I suppose to this day, I am still an activist, but with a small a. you know, 2 or 3 years ago here at home, or 3 years ago, I used an app called Nextdoor and just asked people what would they think if someone was to put out a pride flag, and got nothing but positive results. So I hung one out just for the weekend of Pride or for the week of Pride. I can't remember. Weekend of Pride. I hung it out front window, and I felt that so I'm still, as I say, it's activist with a small a. I do what I can. And I have had like so many people over the years, just explaining the same things to people who have no idea what we go through as LGBTQIA plus people.
Sure.
They have no concept that they think you come out and that's it. You're fine. Out into the world you go and everything's great. And then but I'm still coming out, 67 years old, and I'm still coming out on a regular basis to people who say to me things like, I say, oh, I don't drive. We have a car, but I don't drive. Say, oh, does your wife drive? And I think like, here I go again. I don't know how many times I'm going to have to come out to people or choose to come out, like, especially if it's someone older or someone that I don't want to offend. And think like, do I say to them, actually, no, my my husband drives? Or do I just let them be because there's no point in driving the point home? And so those occasions are always arising still. I probably will never stop coming out. I got a personal trainer recently because I have slight health issues and I needed a bit of guidance in the gym and coming out to the trainer, because again, some occasions arise when they assume that my partner is a woman, and and I just think, oh fuck, here we go again.
Yeah, especially as you get a bit older, over 35, you only get one, you only seem to get one label. And
Yeah.
if that's old, that's the only one you get. You can't be old and gay.
No,
It's been,
absolutely. And I don't think I felt that. I actually don't think I felt that till I was maybe maybe 50. My 50th birthday was the biggest birthday for me, was the only birthday I have never enjoyed. I didn't mind turning 30, didn't mind turning 40, didn't mind turning 60. And I probably won't mind turning 70. But 50 was this awful, I didn't want to party, I didn't want anything. I felt old, and I've been in a monogamous relationship with my hubby for 21 years. And we were still partying up until I was mid 50s. And then I realized that, I was going down to the Kremlin, and I still love to dance, and I'll still be on a podium, and I'll still whip my t-shirt off occasionally at that age. But suddenly realizing that I wasn't old enough to be their daddy, I was old enough to be their granddaddy. There's a certain amount of pride in that, but it's still an awful lot of, oh fuck, I'm really old. And I don't feel really old, but I know the get word is just, I think you read articles, and you watch podcasts, and you see reels on Instagram and stuff about respecting the older generation, but I don't think it's done. I really don't think it is.
You're not the only one to say that on our podcast as well. A lot of people have said they don't feel that there's respect for the elders of our communities, particularly elders who have been involved in the activism and
Mm.
helping it pave the way and make it easier for people to be coming out.
I think that I don't think if you went down to the Kremlin on any given night or any nightclub in this country now, because there's certainly, this it happens outside Belfast now, thank God. And you said Jeff Dudgeon to them, or Doug Sobey, even more so Doug Sobey, or Northern Ireland Gay Rights Association, or Sean McGuire. They just look at you blankly. They have no idea who those people are, and how hard it was in the 70s to be the public face of what was known then as homosexuality. Documentaries where Jeff and co appeared, and Jeff was a working civil servant, and because he took the European Court or the case to the European Court of Human Rights, or Strasbourg Court of Human Rights as it was, that he was the public face of it, and they have no idea what those people, how hard those people work to get them a fucking nightclub. Sorry, and I get angry here because they think they've got a fucking nightclub and somewhere to drink, that they somehow, that's all they need. That's all that, as long as I'm all right, Jack. I think that maybe some of that has changed with the trans community becoming more visible. And I think the kids now are very much, at least I hope they are, behind the trans community. It's sort of like the battle that unifies them. And that's much needed. And if they're not fighting that battle, then they should be ashamed of themselves. Because this is not going away. We're living in an era now where they're winding back rights left, right, and center in the world. And just when we thought we were getting places, just when we thought we could get married and adopt, hallelujah, it's not going to, there are still places in the world where they're throwing people off the top of buildings, or winding back women's rights and taking away, abortion rights and body autonomy rights and everything. So they better get active, But
Absolutely.
the likes of Jeff and Sean and Doug and all those people were real instigators. And I don't, the thing is, I just realized I don't know who the women were that were involved.
Right, I was just about to ask you, were at that time were you friends with many lesbians? Were they out? Did they share the same spaces?
Well, the woman who brought me out in the morning, who arranged my dinner and things, was very bisexual, I suppose. That's how she came into contact with all those people that we just talked about in Nigeria and fought with them. I don't know how she would have identified, but she certainly had male and female lovers even when I knew her. When I come out, I certainly like I now I don't know. I certainly knew a few lesbians, just there were some lesbians on scene. Most of them I was afraid of. And most, it's that thing, and
Lesbians used to be scary.
yeah, it used to be scary. And formidable, and there were certainly, there was
Some still are.
but there was like, oh, don't go near her. And I'm not going to mention names, but there was a few that was like, don't go fucking near her, it's dangerous. And so there was this like almost fables of like lesbians were don't really wearing Birkenstock, wearing overweight, violent drunks, you know, as if they weren't men who can't categorize there somewhere. Um, but certainly not for many years I wouldn't have been friends with many women. And as I said, I don't know any of the women apart from Maureen who were involved in Niagara back in the day, and there were lots. So my own misogyny there is just like, oh my God, just hit me in the face. Um,
But they were there,
or they were always
just
there,
not on your radar, probably.
not on my radar, but they were there. And there certainly was plenty of women on scene, not never as many obviously as the men. And there were some, I remember like when I met some really glamorous lesbians as well, later. Um, And I have a few, photo frames in my mind here of just like, a couple of women who were in a couple at the time. One had short bleached hair and one had dark or cropped, like buzzed hair and coming in wearing, they'd been to some awards or something. One was wearing a black suit, one was wearing a white suit. They had, I don't think they had any top on underneath it, and heels on or whatever, and looking fucking drop dead, stereotypically gorgeous, and just looking at them thinking, oh my God, I have that picture, that snapshot in my mind, but that was few and far between. And I don't know what it's like now. I haven't been on scene in a long time now.
Well, it's very different. These days is more of a mixture of the whole LGBTQIA plus community. There's less segregation, I think. And I think at the minute we're down to one bar, which is the Maverick. The other bars, the Kremlin and Union Street, don't seem to be for our community at the moment.
That was going to happen. Ulster University,
Yeah,
university, thousands of students, there's money to be made.
just the demographics.
And they forget who
changed.
made the money, forget who got them there.
But Shane, just before I forget, we're always putting out a call for pictures and things from back in the day for places like uh Crow's Nest and stuff. And Carpenters is one of the places we don't have anything of because it's from before people had video phones, camera phones,
Mm.
and nobody would have brought out a camera for on a night out.
No.
So could you give us a wee description of what you remember? Um, there was a door. Was it a metal door with a wee hatch in it?
Yeah, it was just like a door. To my memory, was covered with like metal, and there was like a little letterbox thing that opened, at eye level. And they pulled the shutter across. It was really like something out of a movie. It was like something out of one of those. Probably the closest being to, illegal drinking clubs or somewhere in the States where you see a movie, and if you want to get in, and then they close it and they open the door if they knew you, apparently. So in those days, I think the result of that was there's very, very few straight people in there. At least my impression of it was very secretive because it had to be. It may have been legal, but it wasn't pretty. And it was still unsafe, and many people who might have been on the scene were still not out. So even if they had camera phones, I guarantee there wouldn't have been any photographs taken. You know, um, Even some of the people who might have you just didn't want your photographs and put anywhere anybody have any evidence.
So even though homosexuality was decriminalized, still wasn't acceptable socially and
Oh,
by wider society.
no, I never. I remember I was on the first Pride March, or at least I was reminded recently by some older lesbians that what I think of as the first Pride March maybe wasn't the first Pride March, that there was one that the women had done before that. But I know you need to check that with some of the women.
Yep.
But what I know was
If you know about that, get in touch. You need to know.
I'm going to have dinner actually in out one for an overnight stay with one of my oldest lesbian friends, and for some food and stuff, and I'll ask her if she would take part, and she probably will. But I went
The
on
first one was 1991, as far as we are aware. Is that the one that you were attending?
Probably would have been, but again, I'll see if I can get you someone to verify their version of the first, what they regarded first. The
Sure.
first one I went was on, it was, I can't remember, and I have very bad memory for a lot of things, but it was on we had a bus, and I think it was a double-decker bus. And the memorable thing, I think it drove up to Botanic, and we had flags over the side or something, or banners, but there were some people who wouldn't go upstairs. So they were still not out. They were still
Didn't want to be seen.
didn't want to be seen, but they wanted to be part of, but they didn't want to be seen. And I think all we did was we drove up and then we might have stopped and then come down again. I'm not sure exactly. But I remember there was about 30 people or maybe more on the bus. I can't remember, but it was so fucking daring. You know, it was like, oh my God, here we go. And it felt dangerous and it felt frightening and it felt exciting. And it felt like this could be something. This could be really the start of something. But you do have to remember that in keeping this in context, we also had the whole rise of HIV and AIDS. Just when for me and for people like me, even before the ones who came out before me and after me, there was still this, at a time when maybe we could have been feeling more free and maybe we could have done things differently, that all of a sudden we were just back in the closet again.
The stigma and
the stigma, the fear. And of course I did, when safer sex advice at that stage was don't sleep with anyone from outside your town sort of thing. I went and got an American boyfriend who, my version of safer sex was, well, he's not from New York. We were just so ignorant. And we were just so that just pushed, let's say it pushed us back in the closet, but it gave us something else to be judged by, to be afraid of, to be, yeah, you were just afraid again, you just, you had well, I personally had like a couple of years of, yeah, not even that. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, fuck. So I did what I do, I wasn't long out when I joined Car Friend and did the phone lines for them and did the Saturday afternoon drop in and stuff. And then I went and became a volunteer for its helpline. And actually there met some people who are all dead, who were HIV positive, and I didn't think it was here yet. I really didn't. But I do remember the first person he sat in front of me and said, and I was saying, like, well, I haven't actually met anybody yet. And they said, how do you know? And I said, well, I suppose I don't know, but I don't think I've met anybody who's HIV positive. And they just said, yes, you have. And I became emotional again. And I just sat and cried because I knew they were talking about them. That person's dead now. So it was all that double whammy stuff that I imagine all of the people from that era must have memories of just like, yeah, everything's great. Oh, fuck, it's not. And then you started looking at facts and figures and you started looking at fucking advertising campaigns that had no human beings in them, no human faces,
tombstones and
doom and gloom and death and
yeah, the big scary voice.
It was horrendous, but I then I was a volunteer and I was on the training group for your AIDS helpline, and spent wonderful times training people. So many people who wanted to get informed, and there were people like from the Salvation Army who came with us, two people, Gladys, another woman, Gladys I became friendly with, and who wanted to know what happens if it becomes such a big issue. What do we need to know and how do we help? And they became volunteers and came on volunteer weekends and got information and stuff. And it was heartwarming that way. But an aspect of it was one of the first World AIDS days, or maybe the first World AIDS Day I was involved in, and we all gathered in his happening. But nobody would go out. And me and a couple of other people took a candle and went down to City Hall and lit the candle. There was only about three of us, and it was dark. It was December, so it was dark. And everybody else was afraid to be. We were afraid to be seen. We were terrified. We were probably wearing T-shirts or something that would identify us, or if anybody else does, what are you doing? You know, do you lie?
Red ribbon.
Or red ribbon, probably something like that. You know, do you lie again and go back into that closet, or do you say actually we're here to commemorate people who died in HIV and AIDS? And yeah, it was only I think it was only 2 or 3 of us went down. And we were only there 2 or 3 minutes, but we felt we needed to do something that was not sitting in the rooms of AIDS helpline. And at the same time understanding so much that understanding why people didn't want to go outside. The stigma was real and the fear was real. And all of it being part at that stage we had a lot of straight people in AIDS helpline. I don't know if that was exceptional or not, but we had a lot of straight people coming to us and saying, well, we need to get informed.
And was the helpline based in Carpenters?
No, at that stage it was in Bryson House.
Right.
Which I think it was the top floor of Bryson House, actually. Yeah, it was because there was skylights in which made the training rooms very bright. So there, that was just something that people, again, nowadays, younger people don't realize that it was, nowadays you take a pill, you take PrEP and you just go out and do your thing. And I'm really glad that that's available. Really glad. I think, it gives people choices to make. But I can remember, just remember more fear, just more fear.
This is the end of part 1 of Shane Cassidy's episode. If you want to listen to part 2, just click the link